prayer before study. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work. For to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. All right, very good. We are going to combine our look at art with our look at this chapter, because in this chapter we read about a couple of artists that were working in the north, right? So you read about Germany and the Netherlands and England and what's going on in the north artistically, and also an event that changed the world we'll talk about for a while. Whereas all the artists we've looked at previously this semester have been working in Italy, mostly, which is kind of where the Renaissance started from and spread. The first question I asked you, let's just jump on it. What did Johann Gutenberg do? What did he do? Gus.
He was one of the first people to print books, and he printed the Bible in Latin.
Yes. The printing press. Now, they knew how to print things, but not how to print books, because there's two different ways to print things. That picture over there on the wall behind my dollhouse is a print. My daughter took a slab of linoleum, kind of a rubbery substance, and she took a sharp instrument, kind of cup-shaped, and she dug out parts of it. So everything that's white, she dug away. And everything that's black, she left. And if it's kind of in between, she dug part of it away and it wasn't quite as deep. And I actually have the slab downstairs that's from. She did it backwards, right? Because just like, you know, when you use rubber stamp, the picture's backwards if you look on the rubber stamp. And then she rubbed ink on it and pressed paper on it, and then it comes out like that. It was very cool. So we're going to look at an artist that was doing that. But how long would it take to carve out all the words on a page backwards? And every page for a whole book? Well, nobody's going to do that. I can write it I can handwrite it faster than I can do that. What I need is a way to have letters that I can just put in any configuration I want and spell any words I want. And so we call this movable type. It's movable because I can put a T, an H, and an E and spell the. Then I can take those letters out, and I can get other letters and put them in a different combination. So it's movable. So that's what he worked on. As far as we know, in China, they knew something about the printing process, but they weren't using movable type. And so perhaps some of you have you ever seen the little metal letters in a case? Mm-hmm. Have you guys ever seen a typewriter? Okay. I was like, what a weird question. I have an old typewriter. Like old, not even electric one. You know, I have an electric one downstairs, but I have my father-in-law's in there. But it's got, and the prongs that come up, right? They have letters on them. Yes.
We have one at home somewhere.
Okay. Many people have one at home somewhere. Nobody uses them anymore. I think they're cool. So each letter's on a piece of metal, and you hit the button, and that letter pops up and hits the page, and that's how we typed. So they would have a case in a printer shop. They would have a case with letters, and of course, because we capitalized the beginning, they would have some letters that were capital letters and some that were small letters. And actually, often in printing shops, they kept them in different cases, uppercase and lowercase. That's why we refer to those letters as uppercase and lowercase. It's where they kept them in a printer shop. I love this. I love that sort of thing. So, you can visit printing presses today, and my son went to Slovenia, which is here's Italy sticking down, and here's Greece sticking down, and the bay comes up, and Slovenia is kind of right across from Italy, tiny country. And anyway, he visited a working old printing press. And here's a picture of the type. This picture they printed, and then he set the type to have our name Ferguson. And they make their own paper. And I'll pass this around because you can see in the picture, you can see the picture. There's a slab here, a square, that's this picture, only backwards. And then below it is a space where you could put the letters in, and they let my son put the letters in. And then he ran it through the press, and what that means is you load the machine with the picture and the letters, and then you mount it, and you can just run sheets of paper through. It would take a long time if you, okay, I have to get a piece of paper and I have to rub it on the ink, right? And then I have to re-ink it, and then I get another piece of paper and rub it. No, they shoot it through the machine with a hand crank, right? So so these are the picture of the process, and then they put the seal on it, and that's what he's doing at the bottom. But this, you can see the mechanism there. You can pass that around if you want. So this is what Gutenberg did, and as Gus told us, the first complete book that he chose to print was a Bible, because it's the most important book that we have. Now, I asked you, how do you think this changed the world? What's one way, Gianna?
More people could read or learn to read because the printing press made books a lot easier, make therefore a lot cheaper, and
Okay.
just in greater supply.
And because as we know, the more of something there is, the cheaper it is, right? So if all the books are books written out by hand, there just aren't as many of them because there isn't enough time to make thousands of copies of it. It's going to take a long time for there to be thousands of copies. So they become cheaper. Now, let me ask, this is one of those cases where maybe it seems obvious, but why would more people learning to read or having access to books change the world? What?
More knowledge of many things, religion, medical, just a general broadening of mind.
Yeah. So things that only a few people knew, now many people can know about or experience. If you suddenly have a brilliant new idea, but we're back before the printing press, right? Is this you have learned how to, you positively have learned how to turn lead into gold. You did it. You've studied alchemy, and you nailed it. You nailed it. You can turn any other metal into gold. And you've decided you're a really nice person and you're going to tell the world how to do this. Which, of course, probably not a good idea because now gold isn't going to be worth very much because everybody's going to have it. But anyway, yeah, that aside. But you live before the printing press, and so you want to share your idea. But you got to have a team of people copy down copies. It's going to take a long time before everybody finds out. After the printing press, the next week, you could have thousands of copies of your description of what you did in circulation. Just that quick. So if somebody has an idea that might affect many people, the word can get out fast. And as a matter of fact, about 50 years, 60 years after Gutenberg printed that Bible, a man did have some ideas. A man we're going to talk about very soon. Talked about him a little bit, Martin Luther. And he's going to post his ideas on a church door in Germany. And you know what? Somebody's going to go cop them down, take them to the printer, and print them. Within a month, that list of criticisms of the church that he posted is all over Germany. Just like that. And it couldn't have happened if somebody had to sit in front of the door and copy them down and then give it to a friend and they copy them all down. That would have taken too long. Here's something else to think about, and we often don't think about it because it's not as true in the United States. But have you guys ever visited the far south, like Arkansas and Tennessee and Louisiana? Do the people there talk exactly the way we do? No, they do not. Is it sometimes difficult to understand people? Have you met anyone who was actually difficult to understand? Maybe not that bad? Okay. Even in southern Illinois, when I talk to my aunt on the phone, they've got a bit of a southern thing going on. And so my husband says that I start talking like my aunt when I talk to her on the phone. Just, I don't mean to, but I slow down and apparently I sound like my aunt. But if you go farther south, people not only have what we would say, an accent, but they might actually use words that aren't as common for us to use. Unfortunately, I can't think of an example. How about ladies in there? Do you know of an area of America that uses a word that's common for them but not common for us? A completely different word for something. Darlin. Yeah, but we use those words. We just don't use them as often. Maybe do you know?
Around here we say shopping cart, but in some places in the south they'll say buggy for shopping.
Oh, okay, I like that. An example maybe a bit better would be us in England. We both speak English, but for example, they call a diaper a nappy, and they call a parking lot a car park. And it's just not phrases we use. Okay, so they have a different, we would say a different dialect, I suppose. Yes, Amelia, you got one? Oh, yes. Just off to the right. Just go down the hall and you'll see it right on the right. So if this is always fascinated me. An example of this is is Elliot here, or is it just the neighbor?
There's a truck with a.
Oh, okay. It's probably for the goats, or maybe for the sheep. It's not for us. I took German. I had a German teacher when I was in 7th grade, and I lived in Alaska. And the thing about Alaska is there are people there that grew up there, but a lot of people moved there from somewhere else. So a lot of the kids in school, we'd all moved there from somewhere else because our parents moved there for various reasons. And so this German teacher, he was very interested in regional dialects and accents and things. And he said to us, I'm going to say the beginning of a proverb, a saying, and you tell me how you finish it. And he said, then I'm going to tell you where your family's from. And it was red as a. You're red as a. And I don't know that people use it as much anymore, but my grandma would say this all the time. I'd come in the summer and, I'm all overheated. You're red as a beet. She would say to me, you're red as a beet. But some of my classmates would say something like, red as a tomato. I can't even think of what the other ones were because they just seemed wrong to me. Maybe. I don't know if anyone said that. I just can't remember what the other answers were. I just remember it's, I'm in seventh grade, right? So I'm 11 years old. I'm 12 years old, whatever. It was a while ago. But I just remember thinking, all you people, what is wrong with you people? The phrases are right as a beat. So anyway, he went around and he told us, and he looked at me and he said, "You're from the Midwest." I thought he was a magician or something. I thought, yes, I am. But it was just because he knew that was a Midwestern way to say it. All right? Okay. I promised you there is a point to this very long story, and it is this. If you're going to print a book, which version are you going to print? If you live in a country where people in different areas of the country use slightly different words, or maybe the spelling is different, because you might not know this, we haven't had standard spelling for very long. In fact, 200 years ago, there were many ways to spell words. And sometimes we look at, say, the journals of Lewis and Clark. You might say, wow, they were terrible spellers. There was standard spelling. So, so which one are you going to use? Now, imagine you're in England. You're in Renaissance England. It's 1550. And you are going to print a book. And there's farmers in Yorkshire, right? And I'm telling you guys, even today, if you can't understand them. Even other English people can't understand the Yorkshire farmers sometimes. Or you're in Cornwall, or you're in Birmingham. But you need to pick one to print the book in. You're going to write it and print it a certain way. Whose way of speaking do you think you would choose? You're in England in 1550. What are you going to choose, Easton?
The one that is like what you speak. Or the most popular.
Okay, we do have two options. It could be the one I speak. But if I'm printing a book, what do I want? Why am I printing this book, Easton?
For other people to like read.
And what is there in it for me? Am I going to get anything out of this? Just the joy of helping others, which is okay. That's a good thing. But maintaining my machinery costs money. What would I like out of this? Money. I want to sell books. So if I pick the one I speak, but it's not the most popular one, who's going to buy my book that I'm printing? The people who can understand it, or the people who can't understand it?
People who can.
So if I want to make as much money as possible, I'm going to have to pick the one that's going to sell the most. And which one is that going to be? The most popular. And where will I find the most popular, do you think? I'm in England in 1550. Where do you think? London. The Queen lives in London. The King lives in London. Most people live in London. I'm going to pick theirs. But that means when I print this book and I distribute it, those Yorkshire farmers and the people in Birmingham and Cornwall, they're all going to read that type of English. And we're going to have a standard, right? We're going to have standard English or standard French or standard German. It's the one they pick to print books in. So it changes language. It makes it so everybody speaks more like each other. Does that all make sense to you guys? And so it's kind of an unforeseen effect of printing books. All right. So we have this great new machine, and it prints books. And books are cheap, and I can get ideas out fast. But, do you guys remember when I showed you pictures of the Book of Kells? Those illuminated manuscripts. Do you remember the curly-Q letters and all the elaborate little pictures and the little cat that was chasing the rat that had a communion wafer in his mouth in the margin? And it was so pretty. I want my books to be pretty. I don't want just words on the page. What am I going to do? How am I going to make my books pretty? Because it's not going to do me any good to take every copy and draw a picture in it. I'm stuck back to I can only produce as many copies as I can produce by hand. How can I make pictures fast in a book? I can print them from in this case, it's not a linoleum cut, it's a wood cut. I can take a block of wood, and why don't I use metal? Because it's really hard to cut into metal. Wood, do any of you whittle? Make things out of wood or scratch your name in wood? Okay, and it depends on the type of wood. Some woods are softer than others. But you can take a tool and you can do exactly what my daughter did. You can cut out the parts that you don't want to have any ink on them, that you want to be empty, white on the page. And you can leave the parts raised that you want to have the ink. And you can load that into your machine. Exactly like they did there in Slovenia with that picture. So one artist in Germany that was really, really good at this, his name was Albrecht Dürer. And you read about, he was one of the 2 artists in the artist section at the end of your chapter. And beautiful, beautiful art. But one of the things he was amazing at was doing woodcuts. And this is actually a picture of a piece of wood. This is a piece of wood he carved. And everything's backwards from the way it's going to look in the picture. And unfortunately, well, maybe I should pass it around. I wish that they had another page that was the whole thing, but I'm going to pass it around. This is what got printed from it. It's Samson and the lion. Samson wrestling the lion. So remember, everything's backwards. But just take a look at that, and also think about the care and the skill that goes into carving out the wood to make a picture that looks like that. Woodcuts became the new way of decorating our books because it's nice for books to be pretty. People like that. And sometimes you want to include an illustration simply because it is pretty. Sometimes it shows something that it's hard to describe in words. You know? Yes?
I've done that before, just wasn't with wood.
Did you use one of those rubbery pieces? Yeah. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's like that. I tried to do, was it? I don't know if it was you guys when you were really little. Once when I did the little kids at the library in the basement, you remember when you guys came? And I brought tools and everything, but somebody cut their finger. After I said to y'all, don't put your hand in front of the, I'm not saying it was one of you.
I think we were there. I don't know.
Were you there? You weren't the finger cutters, but you were there when you were little?
I might have cut my finger. I don't really remember.
I apologize to whichever of you cut your finger. But I did tell you not to put your hand in front of the thing, but you were, anyway, I should have known. But yeah, it's a lot easier to, although that still takes some skill because you can't dig, if you dig in, then it gives and you end up cutting yourself. Isn't that amazing? So Dürer worked with publishers to make these woodcuts. And in this book, there's just a bunch, these are all woodcuts. They're scenes from the Bible. These are scenes from Revelation. I mean, just the detail. Oh my goodness. It's just unbelievable. These were all printed in books. So we still can have beautiful books. We just need a new method. Also, they're no longer one of a kind, right? When somebody handmade a book, it was one of a kind, and now they're mass-produced, but still beautiful. Dürer was not, oh dear, what I did to my book. Dürer not only was an amazing artist with woodcuts. This is a watercolor painting he did. This is a very famous painting. It's called The Hair, or there's an adjective in front of hair. I don't remember what it's called. This is signature always, a large A with a little D inside, Albrecht Dürer. And I found a website, and I didn't put a link in the email because there was other artwork down at the bottom that was maybe not. So I just put in Albrecht Dürer, the hair, and this came up, and it zoomed in on every single hair with the brush. And in his little eye, you can just see kind of a white place there. If you zoom in enough, it's the reflection of the window in the room. It's got 2 rectangle panes. It's so detailed. This is another watercolor by Dürer. Just plants and grass. Again, the detail is astounding. And then this one's very famous. You may have seen this. This is Dürer. This is pen is ink. It's not painted. It's just done with pen and ink. Praying hands. So, fantastic artwork, but artwork that can also appear in books. I want to look at the other artists later, but let's finish the chapter before we look at the other artists. But the thing I wanted to point out was that Dorothy Mills talks about the fact that different countries set up printing houses, and each one kind of had its own famous printing house. And Caxton's Press in England. It says the chief Italian printing house of the Renaissance was in Venice. Aldus was a well-educated man, an author himself, and very well read in the classics. And so he founded the Aldine Press, where editions of the works of the great Greek writers were published. Well, so Venice was the center of publishing in Renaissance Italy. I have a book. It's not from the Aldine Press, but this book was printed in 1589 in Venice. I know. This book. This isn't a copy of it. This book was printed in Venice in 1589. And they used, it sounds very odd, but pigskin was a popular covering. So it's printed, embossed, it's in Latin, and it is a book by a Dominican friar. He was very popular in his day, and he wrote a series of homilies for saints' feast days. So it's just basically a collection of sermons. Sermons in imitation of the saints for their festal days, which are celebrated in the whole year in the church, is what is the whole title in Latin here. And yeah, I'm a little afraid of it because, you know, for 450 years this book has been around, and then I'm afraid I'll be the one. I'll be the weakest link, you know? Like, yeah, that book was fine till that lady got a hold of it and she torched it. So I keep it under in a case and out of the sun and everything in my library. But yeah, it's a guy in Venice set the type for this in 1589 and printed this book. And I just find that really, really cool. See, the print is pretty small on most of the pages. Also, it's difficult to read because it's got the, you know, the S's that look like F's? Have you ever seen that? The S's are really, really big and long, and it's just hard for me to get used to that. But my son, who got me this book, I'm like, have you read my book yet? Like, not yet. But my Latin is good enough to read it, but yeah, the type, also it's pretty small, yes.
Where did he get it?
This is a very good question. Weirdly, in New Orleans. He was there, and there was an antiquarian bookseller so a seller of just old books. And he went in there and he just thought it was really attractive, and he knew it was in Latin, and he knew I studied Latin and I could read it. And so he just bought it for me for Christmas that year. It's cool. But it's not Albus's press, all right? But I don't complain. I don't tell my son, you could have got me one from the Aldine press in Venice. I don't say that. But anyway, so I'm not going to pass it around for obvious reasons. But yeah, this is from Venice, from Renaissance Venice, which is cool. Okay, let us move on, and then I want to show you this other artist too, because you are going to think it's just way cool, I promise you, this other artist. But first, I think this takes us back to our very first class, or maybe the second one. We talked about humanism. It was you, Sean. Did we talk? Were you the one? I asked you what is humanism? What do we mean? We talked about that, and I said we're going to talk about it later. This is the time we're going to talk about it. So again, what is humanism? What is meant by that? We do get a definition in this chapter, but it's a little vague. What do you guys got? You're giving me the look, Sean, the side eye. You can do it. Tell me.
It was an intellectual movement, and it focused on human potential and achievements.
Okay. Keyword being human, right? Focused on human potential, human achievements. And how are you willing to do the second part? How does that differ from what they were basically focused on in the Middle Ages?
It was primarily centered on religious dogma, theology, and
That's okay.
church.
This happens to me too. Yes. So as people started discovering Greek and Roman authors, and they started learning to read Greek, and all those people who ran west after Constantinople fell to the Turks, all these people who brought Greek books with them, and Plato, and stuff that nobody in the West had read for hundreds and hundreds of years. They started thinking more about questions like, what does it mean to be human? In the Middle Ages, our question might have been, what does it mean to be human? It means we're created in God's image, which is true. It means we're made to have relationship with God, which is true. But they also started asking questions like, well, other than that, what does it mean? What does it mean to live here and be human? What are human beings capable of, and what are we not capable of? And this is why I say it's very vague, because it sounds a little bit vague. But can you think of an example of something that would be covered under humanistic studies? What is a branch of study? What is something we might look at or learn about that has to do with being human? It's a hard. I realize that it's a hard question. But what's a form in which people try to show how human beings think or feel? How do we express thoughts and feelings?
Writing or art, like
Right.
music.
Music, arts, literature, poetry. This is in the late Renaissance. We're going to have the first novel, which some people think is that crazy story about the knight, right, who was wacko and fought windmills and stuff. The story of this human being. How did he feel? What was he thinking? Or poems where we express, or like I said, art. So we tend to call those things today the humanities, because they're humanistic studies. They show us what we're like, or people try to express themselves through them. And so it's not surprising then that they would become very interested in art, because they wanted to not only study what do human beings look like, how can we represent human beings realistically, but how can we elicit emotion, which is kind of, that paper I just gave back to you about setting. How do we move people in a certain way, right? Certain words make us feel a certain way. This all is humanistic studies. Now, these people that we're calling humanists still believed we were created in the image of God to worship Him and serve Him. Most of them did. Today, when people use the term, we often mean people who are elevating humanity in the place of God, right? And ignoring God. But they didn't mean that. They didn't mean that. And one of the foremost humanists was Erasmus. And this is the next question I asked you. Erasmus wrote a lot of stuff, but there was one thing in particular that really helped people who wanted to study the Bible. What did he do that helps people? Yeah, Gianna, go for it.
His edition of the New Testament in Greek.
Yes. He painstakingly collected all the known manuscripts that we had of the New Testament. And so here's the problem. If you've ever thought about this before, we don't really have the letters that Paul wrote, those copies. Those have been gone for a long time. But of course, people made copies of them. Sometimes he even asked them to. I mean, not in so many words, but he'd say, and show this to the church and the churches shared his letters back and forth. And so there were lots of copies. And so the originals get lost. And then sometimes, as we know, if we copy things, sometimes we make a little change. And it might, just because we say, I accidentally made a mistake, it could be a mistake that doesn't mean anything. Like if I use the word, I say instead of the. It has a slightly different meaning, but it doesn't really change the message. Anyway, so there's these copies floating around, and sometimes they don't all exactly agree, but he worked through and painstakingly tried to figure out which ones were the right ones and which ones were the most common usage, and he compiled it, and he had it printed, and he said, here you go. Here is the best scholarship can do to present you with the New Testament in the original language, if you want to go back and find out what Paul really wrote, or Peter really wrote, or the evangelists wrote. So this was a huge, huge help. This was also at the time when the Reformation was getting started. We'll talk about that in a minute. And his relationship with them. And so there was a renewed interest in going back to the original sources. Because you got to remember, for 1,000 years, almost no one in Europe could speak Greek or read Greek. It was huge. It was huge for people to learn Greek and then say, oh my goodness, this is what it says. So that was a great help. He wrote lots of other books too. Let's go on to the next question. What was Erasmus's opinion of Martin Luther and the Reformation? What did he think, Easton?
I thought it was a good idea, but he didn't need to keep young without violence.
Yeah. Erasmus thought there was a lot wrong in the church. And in fact, he was on his way to England to visit his friend Thomas More. His buddy Thomas More, who was, as we remember, Chancellor of England, who replaced Cardinal Wolsey. And he was just wanted to pass the time, so he wrote this funny little book called The Praise of Folly. It's not very long, and it was a thing. People wrote essays praising a queen or a king, but sometimes for a joke they would praise something insignificant, like the praise of chocolate, and I write this very eloquent praise of the glories of chocolate, that sort of thing. So he wrote this book, just for kicks, praising folly. first of all, what is folly? Do you know what folly is? What do you
I've always
think?
heard folly in the intention of like making a mistake.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes so and so's folly. It means their mistake, something they shouldn't have done. It's kind of the noun form of an adjective. It's it's foolishness. It's being foolish. So basically, this is the praise of foolishness. How good a thing foolishness is. And some of it's very silly. It's like, oh, I praise you, folly, because you make young men go crazy when they see a pretty girl and and lose their heads, and then they run off with them and get married. And you know, without that, the human race would end because people would never get married. And they don't really think about how tough it is to live with someone for the rest of your life. They're just foolish and they just are young and they get married. That sort of silliness. But some of it wasn't as silly. He said things like, oh, I praise you, folly, because it makes young men go into monasteries and just give up their lives and not really do anything worthwhile. Or I praise you, foolishness, because it makes people, you know, go to a church and they don't care whether the priest is living a moral life or can take care of their spiritual needs or anything. And he started making some criticisms of the church. So when this got out, Martin Luther said, golden, Erasmus, if he gives his stamp of approval to my movement to reform the church, we're golden. I got to know what's happening outside.
Elliot's here.
It's here.
Oh, bless his heart.
40 minutes late.
It's okay. Welcome, Elliot. It is good to see you. You made it. Here, I have your paper. Do you know what they say? Better late than never. That is what they say. And I believe it. I will trade you. Thank you, sir. We are going through the questions. And I've been recording, Elliot. I will just keep recording and I will post it. And if you want to watch the first half of class later, you can do that. We're talking about Erasmus and Martin Luther and the Reformation. So Martin Luther thought, yay, Erasmus agrees with me. He thinks there's a bunch of rottenness in the church and we need to reform it. And so they said, hey, Erasmus, do you want to join me? And Erasmus said, no, thank you. I think there are things that need to get fixed, but breaking the church in half is not the way to fix it. And Martin Luther actually got very, very angry. And Martin Luther, I have no doubt that he loved God very much, but he could be kind of nasty and he wasn't always very nice, you know, and he wrote some really nasty things about Erasmus after that when he found out Erasmus wasn't going to join him. But Erasmus, he knew there were serious problems in the church that needed reform, but he just thought that was not the way to do it. But oddly, he single-handedly probably worked with the reformers more than anyone else by putting together the Greek New Testament. And this is, it came just in time, because this is a good time to tell you what I would like you to do for your writing assignment next week. Now, you guys have been churning out all of these persuasive essays and character studies and setting studies, and I just think you need to do something a little different. And we're going to do something a little different. But first I need to tell you about something else about Erasmus. One of the books that Erasmus wrote was a guide for teachers and students. He wrote about how to become a better writer. How do we become better students and better writers? And I feel like it should be obvious to us that the more words you know, the better writer you could be. Does that make sense? So we all if you have access to a small child, all right, if you live with one, access to one on a regular basis, you will know that their stories are not very deep and rather limited because very small children don't have very many experiences and they have a very small vocabulary. And so I still have somewhere downstairs the opus entitled The Rat, the Cat, and the Man, composed by my youngest, dictated to me, which basically includes three-letter words with a short vowel, was kind of the level we were at. And I don't think we ever found out what happened to any of the three of these, but we gave up on it. It just wasn't awesome. But the older we get and the more we're exposed to words, the more detail and nuance we can put into our writing. And so this ability is called, you do not have to write this down unless you just want to, by people who teach writing or taught writing in the Middle Ages, they refer to this as copia. Copia is actually a Latin word, and it means abundance or supply. And some of you might be familiar. I am not Albrecht Dürer, so please forgive me. With a decoration, we sometimes put on our tables this big horn. Oh, no. Okay. Oh, no, you shouldn't. Okay, you got the idea. And this is hollow, except it's much longer than that. Why is it so skinny? Okay, and then there's fruit in it, and there's grapes and bananas and whatnot, and it's spilling out. Have you ever seen this, a picture of this? Okay, do you know what it's called? It's called a cornucopia. Isn't that a fun word? Copia, abundance or supply, and cornu is the Latin word for horn. Or this kind of horn. It's a horn of abundance, a horn of plenty.
I was going to say bugle because that's what I thought they always looked like.
Sometimes they do use the word for like a horn that you might blow in battle. But it can also be like, probably because they often used animal horns to blow, because they can make a noise. Anyway, so copia, abundance or supply. And how do we get an abundance of words? Partly by reading a lot, and talking a lot, and writing a lot, and sometimes we just have to make ourselves think. You probably know more words than you realize that you know. I don't know what the statistic is, but I've read that the average person has a vocabulary of a certain number of words, but the number that we actually use in conversation with each other is a lot smaller than the number that we recognize when we're reading. So sometimes we have to be forced to, remember. See, now this is the point where you're not liking where this is going, right? I liked it when we were doing the fruit, but now we're being forced to remember words and we're a little afraid. Don't be afraid. Erasmus had an exercise, the same Erasmus. So this is a 400-year-old exercise in which he would take a sentence, and this is going to be your sentence. I'll tell you what you're going to do with it in a minute. Write down this sentence. Because this is Erasmus's sentence. This is your letter pleased me greatly. That's it. This is not a hard sentence. Your letter pleased me greatly. I got a letter in the mail, and I loved it. Your letter pleased me greatly. Erasmus took this sentence and he tried to write it as many other ways as he could possibly think of without changing the meaning. That's important. So you can't say, the letter I got from you yesterday. It doesn't say anything about time. The only information you can include is your letter pleased me greatly. Now, let me throw it out to you guys. Can anybody think of another way to say this? Because some of them will pop right into your head. Do you have one? What do you got, Gus?
I really enjoyed your letter.
I really enjoyed your letter. Does it mean the same thing? It means exactly the same thing. Instead of the letter being the subject, I am the subject. And this, I'm going to write that on there. What did you say again? I really enjoyed your letter?
Yeah.
Let's just look at these. Because you might say, well, why would I even want to do this? It actually makes a difference. Okay. Your letter pleased me greatly. The subject is the letter. So the very first thing that I hit when I read that sentence is letter. I think, this sentence is about the letter. The letter is the most important thing. What's the first thing that hits me here?
I.
What's this sentence about? Me. This sentence is about the letter. This sentence is about me. And you might say, but it's the same thing. Yes, it is. But it's got a different focus and emphasis. So here's the freaky thing, guys. All these papers you write for me, every time I write a note to someone, I probably have dozens of choices. And by the way, Erasmus came up with 150 ways. I know. And your assignment is to find out how many ways you can do it. And here's my request. I realize you could get a thesaurus and just burn through, but I want you to develop the copia, right? I mean, I want to see what's in there now. I want you to retrieve the things that are already in there and think about it. Ways to say it. How can I do it? By rearranging, by using synonyms. But he did come up with 150 ways. So let's see who can. Let's have a minor competition here. We'll see who can come up with the most ways. All right. And maybe your goal will be to beat the people in the Tuesday class or something like that. Oh, I was going to say we won't tell them, but I'm recording it, so it's out. So when we are writing anything, we have more options than we realize. And the option, and what do you guys do? You do exactly what I do. You just pick the first option that comes in your head. I know you do it, because I do it too. When I write a paper, when I write a blog post or whatever, it's what I say, boom, said it and done. Because words come pretty easy for me. And I don't really think about, wonder what would happen if I made this passive instead of active. I wonder if And part of when I ask you to put those figures of speech in your paper, it's making you develop that. But this is your writing assignment. I want to see how many different ways you can write the same sentence with the same meaning, but not with that combination of words in that order. That's all I will say. And just keep in mind Erasmus did 150. So we'll see what you can do. I'm curious. I should be forced to do it too, shouldn't I? It would probably be good for me. So you don't blame me, blame Erasmus. That's all I have to say. That's all the writing. You're all looking. See, some of you don't, like Elliot doesn't look upset. Well, it's like, yeah, this is a challenge. Easton's okay, and so are you. You don't like it. All right, let's finish up our list of questions with Thomas More. We mentioned him last week. Who was, Grace has a full, Grace can give us the full scoop on Thomas More. In fact, Grace, share a few things about Thomas More.
He was born on February 6th, 1478 in London.
You don't have to read them all if you don't want to, but you can. Just the highlights. Pick your three favorite.
He was the Speaker of the House of Commons
Okay.
in England. And he became a lawyer for that.
Became a lawyer.
And then, he died on July 6th, 14.
And he died. And how did he die?
He was executed.
He was executed. This is the what happened to him. Yes. Why would somebody other than Grace like to tell me why he was executed? Triana.
Because he refused to take an oath that King Henry was asking all the nobles to take, so he could become the leader of the England.
Mm-hmm. Remember, Henry has a problem. Catherine only has a daughter, doesn't want to marry her, likes Anne Boleyn, great, except the church won't give him a divorce. So his answer is, I am now the head of the church, and I give myself a divorce, and now England has its own church. But like Gianna said, all the government officials had to sign a pledge, an oath, acknowledging Henry as the head of the church. And Thomas More said, I can't do that, because you're not. And so they put him in prison. His wife came, his daughters came. Thomas More was apparently just an amazing, lovely man. Educated his daughters extremely well in a time where many women didn't learn Latin and Greek. But in his household, they were fine writers and scholars, and they begged him, on occasion, to just sign the paper. I can't do it. So they brought him out and they chopped off his head, but not before he said, tell the king that I am his good servant, but God's first. And he died. So he is considered a martyr. He is considered a saint and a martyr because he died standing up for the church. Was a brilliant, brilliant man. And I mentioned he was a good friend of Erasmus and wrote that book about the island where everything was perfect called Utopia that we read a section of in Dorothy Mills about the enclosures, about the horrible things happening to farmers with the enclosures. That was Thomas More. Yeah, Henry was very serious about this whole becoming the head of the church thing, and Thomas More died for it. Yes.
I don't remember. Did he become the head of the church?
Henry?
Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And to this day, the reigning monarch of England is the head of the Anglican Church and appoints the Archbishop of Canterbury and all of that. So in a few weeks, we're going to be diving into the Reformation. But always remember, England is completely different. All the Reformation countries we're going to talk about are changing because they have a problem with the church, because they think the church is wrong. England changed because the church wouldn't give the king a divorce. And so this actually comes into later history, and it comes into our history as Americans too. Because we're going to find out a lot of people just think they didn't go far enough. A lot of people thought the church, the Anglican Church, was too Catholic, and that we needed to change that. And so we'll dive into that as we go through the rest of the semester. A lot of the second half of the semester will be the Reformation. But remember, all these things are going on at the same time. It's hard to keep track of everything that's going on at the same time. I was going to say it must have been an exciting time to live, but it must have been a very confusing, terrifying time to live. At the end of this chapter, Dorothy Mills mentioned two famous Northern artists. One was Albrecht Dürer, and the other was Hans Holbein, another German artist. And I have, just a second, okay, I can't let you see this yet. I have one of his most famous paintings. It's called The Ambassadors. And I like this painting for several reasons. First of all, it's exceedingly detailed. I'm going to pass it around in a minute because I want you to look closely. They're very well dressed. These guys look confident. They're foreign ambassadors. And they're surrounded by all sorts of scientific instruments and musical instruments and books, and they're just very knowledgeable. You can tell these guys are very, very knowledgeable. They're on top of the world. It's very, very detailed. You can even see the pattern in the drapes behind them. But there's this smudge thing here. Now, I'm going to pass this around. I want you to take a look at it. And I want you to see if you can figure out why there's a smudge here. If you think you figure it out, don't say it. Just keep it to yourself and let everybody else have a chance to look at it. And I am going to tell you what it is. But don't blow it up for anybody who hasn't had a chance to look at it yet. You'll like this. I mean, in a picture where everything is so perfect, and then there's just the... Do you know what it is, Sean? Do you think you know what it is? Okay. Ooh, you're being very mum. You're taking it very seriously. You're not even gonna... I did have somebody figure it out on Tuesday. I think they thought they were guessing, but unfortunately he did not listen to... I'm recording if he's watching this. I didn't say his name. He said it out loud, but, so I warned you. There are two Hans Holbeins, dad and son. This is Hans Holbein the younger. I just threw that in because we're just waiting for people to look at the picture. Is the hay gone? All right. So, does anybody, now you may share. Does anybody think they know what's going on down here on the floor? You're just toying with me, Sean. You're making me think you knew. Does it seem odd? Because everything is just so perfect, and then there's some weird thing. What do you think it is? Do you have do you have an idea? Do you have
Maybe they're left-handed.
Maybe they dropped the brush accidentally. It's not the right answer.
I don't think this is it. I'm just saying. To me, it looked like elephant tusk.
Oh.
Which it isn't. I can tell that, but.
It is not an elephant tusk. Okay, should I? Oh, yeah.
Is it a dead piece of wood?
Oh, that's very good. It's not a dead piece of wood. Okay, here's the thing. You're gonna love it. Everybody loves it. Okay, so there was a thing. There was, see, now you can't see my head, but it doesn't matter. Okay, nobody's gonna watch this now. There was a thing they used to do in the Renaissance where they put something in a picture and you can't tell what it is when you look at it straight on. But what they do is they put it in a frame, and in the side of the frame there's a little hole. And so this is on the wall, right? Right? It's mounted on the wall. And it's got a frame. And you have to come like this. And you have to look in a hole in the side of the frame. And if you do, it makes a picture. And I know. This is the picture. But why didn't you say so? I asked you.
I thought it looked like a stretched skull.
It's a stretched skull. It's a stretched skull. A skull you can only see. See the floor? See the floor? Now the floor is all wonky.
But I didn't think that. I was like, that they didn't stretch a skull.
They stretched a skull, Gianna. They stretched a skull. So there are other pictures like this. This is the most famous one. It's just so cool. And so next question. Maybe we might ask this, why would they put a skull in the middle of this picture?
I mean, it could be for Thomas More, but also somebody they beheaded for
All right, that is a very good idea. I don't know that these guys had any connection with Thomas More. Yeah, Holbein was German and not English. But look at these guys again. What did we say? How are they dressed? They're rich. Did they need anything? No, they got everything. Are they pretty important if they're ambassadors? Yes. When we get rich and important and we have everything, what is it easy to forget? God and the fact that it doesn't go on forever. Right? This is kind of morbid. We're not as comfortable with this today. But back, even, back this far, and even in the 1700s, they used to put, it's Mrs. Ferguson's going to draw again. Everybody look out. My family went to Plymouth and Boston, and so we went to colonial cemeteries, and they would have a tombstone, right? And then they'd have this. Okay, that looks like a mushroom. I'm sorry, this is not a mushroom, or a slice of bread. But they'd have a okay, I should just not have even tried to draw this. All right, but it would be like and it would have wings. Okay, just forget it. And then written on it, memento mori. And they called it a memento mori. It means in Latin, remember that you will die. Remember. And it's hard to remember when you're just looking at that and laughing. Sorry, I'm just getting rid of that as fast as possible. Just got to take an art class. And so I think that this is a message that when you're on top of the world, there's something that's always lurking, and it's our mortality. And this isn't a fun thing to talk about, especially when you're young. And the older you get, the more you realize, oh, I probably only have about X number of years if I live a certain lifespan, right? And for you guys, it just seems like a long time. But when you hit bigger numbers, it just doesn't seem like you have that much time left. And so, so I think it's a memento mori. It's a reminder that when you're on top of the world, this is what's lurking. But I just love the whole optical illusion thing. So I'm gonna leave it out here. So if I go right here, I can't completely and utterly see it like it looks like in that picture. But you can definitely. But you have to play with it a little bit. So I'll leave it out. And then when we're done with class, if you want to play around with it from the side and take a look, that's fine. All right. Any questions or comments? Not about my drawing? We are skipping chapter 8, just to give you a heads up. That's in your reading guides, and it's in the email. So, and let me remind myself what we're skipping to. Oh, yes. Next time we're going to look at science, developments in science, because it's also happening at the same time. One of the things you're going to read about, we already talked quite a bit about, and Sean gave us a sample because it's Leonardo da Vinci. And maybe I'll look up some more of his machinery from the sketchbook. But we're also going to take a look at Kepler and Copernicus and some of the astronomers, okay, next time. So read about that and answer the questions. Tell me how many ways your letter pleased me greatly. And then we're starting The Two Towers, which is the next book in the trilogy, and read chapters 1 through 4, the first 4 chapters. And what I want to do for the rest of the time together is talk about Fellowship of the Ring, which we finished this week. And I want to tell me a little bit about Legolas and Gimli. When they first met, do they seem to be best buddies? Do they seem to get along very well at the beginning? Does anybody remember? Do you know anything about elves and dwarves in general? About their relationship?
They seem to just loathe each other.
Yeah, elves and dwarves don't get along, despite the fact that as they were passing, My daughter has all these enormous Middle Earth posters. You know, she's got Glamdring and Sting. And she moved away and she took them all. And I used to be so cool when I taught this and I brought swords and stuff, and now I'm not cool at all. So the Shire's here and Rivendell, and as they're heading down, they go through an area that Gandalf refers to as Holland. Let me see if I can, okay. Well, here we are at last, said Gandalf. Here the elven way from Holland ended. Holly was the token of the people of that land, and they planted it here to mark the end of their domain. For the west door was made chiefly for their use in their traffic with the lords of Moria. Those were happier times, when there was still close friendship at times between folk of different race, even between dwarves and elves. So Gandalf says, a long time ago, in the past, there was a time when elves and dwarves hung out with each other. And so that door, the door to Moria, that he doesn't know how to enter, speak friend and enter, was made by elves for the dwarves and decorated by elves for the dwarves when they used to get along. So this tells us a couple things. A, they used to get along. B, they don't anymore. But listen to the conversation, because up until this point, we don't hear Legolas and Gimli interact very much. But here's what it says. It was not the fault of the dwarves that the friendship waned, said Gimli. I have not heard that it was the fault of the elves, said Legolas. Well, it wasn't the dwarves' fault, says the dwarf. Well, I never heard it was the elves' fault, says the elf. I have heard both, said Gandalf, and I will not give judgment now, but I beg you two, Legolas and Gimli, at least to be friends and to help me. I need you both. The doors are shut and hidden, and the sooner we find them, the better. Night is at hand. So this is the first interaction we see. Later on, they go through Moria, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and come out on the other side, and they go to Lothlorien. And who lives in Lothlorien? I mean, what race of people live in Lothlorien?
Elves.
The elves. The elves live there. Galadriel and Celeborn. And so they stop next to this stream, the Nimrodel, which was also a nymph, a water nymph. And Legolas sings this song, this poem about the Nimrodel. It says, the voice of Legolas faltered and the song ceased. I cannot sing any more, he said. That is but a part, for I have forgotten much. It is long and sad, for it tells how sorrow came upon Lothlorien, Lorien of the Blossom, when the dwarves awakened evil in the mountains. But the dwarves did not make the evil, said Gimli. I said not so, yet evil came, answered Legolas sadly. What do you think the evil, what evil did the dwarves awaken in the mountain? The Balrog, okay? So Tolkien's a little sketchy about what this thing is, right? It's fire, but it's living fire. It's very ancient. And he says the dwarves dug too greedily and too deep and woke up something in the minds. By the way, what were they digging for? Do you remember?
Mithril.
Mithril. This beautiful metal. Where have we met Mithril? Go ahead.
Bilbo got a Mithril.
Yeah. Chainmail.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
David.
Mm-hmm. When they took the mountain, the Lonely Mountain, is something going on again? Something.
Oh, they're back and back down the driveway again. Does he have more hay? No?
Well, how about,
What is he doing?
I just can't compete with a pickup truck. It's very hard. Okay, come back to me. I think it's all good. He just goes down there and takes care of his goats. Um, yeah, when they took them out, the dwarves gave Bilbo a mithril coat of chainmail. And Gandalf, what does Gandalf say about it? Does anybody, except Gianna, remember? Okay, Gianna, tell us.
I don't remember.
Oh, okay. Do you remember? What did Gandalf say about that coat? He says, you know, Thorin, they gave Bilbo a coat of mithril, and then he says something about it. Oh, okay. Sean gets it.
It can't be pierced.
Oh, this is true. It's very, very strong. So this is a right answer. There's another answer too.
It was worth more than the whole Shire.
Yeah, yeah. He said, yeah. That he said, I don't think Bilbo ever knew, but it was worth its value in money was worth more than the entire Shire. and of course, Frodo's standing there wearing it. Currently on him. So remember, dwarves have a problem with money. Dwarves have a problem with greed, I should say. So when we hit the end of this book, has anything changed between Legolas and Gimli? Have you noticed? Has anything changed in Gimli, particularly?
Gimli has seemed to realize somewhat of his greed and just kind of put it behind him somewhat, and Legolas and Gimli have made up some sort of companionship.
Yes, they have. They seem to be much more willing to work together and much more friendly to each other. And it might have something to do with Gimli's reaction to Galadriel. By the way, other people, see, I already went back over the first 4 chapters of Two Towers last night, so if it's already happened. Oh no, it has happened, because Boromir, when they said, oh, let's go to Lothlorien, does anybody remember how Boromir felt about that? They say, hey, yeah, Lothlorien, we'll go talk to Galadriel. And Boromir's, let me see if I can find it. If not, I'll just tell you. Okay, just a second. Be patient. Oh, okay. We will go a short way forward, says Aragorn, until the trees are all about us, and then we will turn aside from the path and seek a place to rest in. He stepped forward, but Boromir stood irresolute and did not follow. Is there no other way? He said. What other fairer way would you desire? Said Aragorn. A plain road, though it led through a hedge of swords, said Boromir. By strange paths has this company been led, and so far to evil fortune. Against my will we passed under the shades of Moria, to our loss. And now we must enter the Golden Wood, you say. But of that perilous land we have heard in Gondor, and it is said that few come out who once go in. And of that few, none have escaped unscathed. Say not unscathed, but if you say unchanged, then maybe you will speak the truth, said Aragorn. So rumor has it this is not a place you want to mess around in. Boromir knows it. And we already said elves don't like dwarves. So here comes this dwarf. And does anybody remember what the rule is going to be? They'll let Gimli come in if what?
If he's blindfolded.
He's blindfolded. Only if he's blindfolded. What? I'm the only one who has to be blindfolded? And Legolas is like, ooh, and kind of, mocks him a little bit. And finally Aragorn says, you know what, let's all be blindfolded, just to make Gimli not feel bad. And so they go in, and then he meets her. And this is their exchange. Remember, they're getting ready to leave, and Galadriel gives them gifts. "And what gift would a dwarf ask of the elves?" said Galadriel, turning to Gimli. "None, lady," answered Gimli. "It is enough for me to have seen the Lady of the Galadrim, and to have heard her gentle words." "Hear, all ye elves," she cried to those about her. "Let none say again that dwarves are grasping and ungracious. Yet surely, Gimli, son of Gloin, you desire something that I could give? Name it, I bid you. You shall not be the only guest without a gift." "There is nothing, Lady Galadriel," said Gimli, bowing low and stammering. "Nothing, unless it is permitted to ask, nay, to name a single strand of your hair, which surpasses the gold of the earth as the stars surpass the gems of the mine. I do not ask for such a gift, but you commanded me to name my desire." The elves stirred and murmured with astonishment, and Celeborn gazed at the dwarf in wonder, but the lady smiled. "It is said that the skill of the dwarves is in their hands rather than in their tongues," she said. "Yet that is not true of Gimli, for none have ever made to me a request so bold, yet so courteous. And how shall I refuse, since I commanded him to speak? But tell me, what would you do with such a gift?" "Treasure it, lady," he answered, "in memory of your words to me at our first meeting. And if ever I return to the smithies of my home, it shall be set in imperishable crystal, to be an heirloom of my house, and a pledge of goodwill between the mountain and the wood until the end of days." Then the lady unbraided one of her long tresses and cut off 3 golden hairs and laid them in Gimli's hand. "These words shall go with the gift," she said. "I do not foretell, for all foretelling is now vain. On the one hand lies darkness, and on the other only hope. But if hope should not fail, then I say to you, Gimli, son of Gloin, that your hands shall flow with gold, and yet over you gold shall have no dominion. You, Gimli, of all the dwarves, someday I foresee you will be rich beyond your wildest dreams, but you won't be mastered by greed. You will use it. You will be its master." It's lovely. And after this point, Gimli and Legolas seem to have some sort of understanding. Gimli has gone to the place where Legolas feels most at home, right? In Lothlorien. Because he's a wood elf, right? And this is the pinnacle. This is the destination place for the elves in Middle-earth. Has Legolas been somewhere that means something to Gimli?
I just forgot the name.
Yeah, Moria. Moria. The wood elf who wouldn't want to go really in a place like that. He's gone through. They've both. Do you ever hear, if you walk a mile in someone's shoes, you understand them better, something like that? They've each walked a mile in each other's shoes, and they've come to an understanding. So they end up in the same boat as they head downriver. The travelers now turned their faces to the journey. The sun was before them, and their eyes were dazzled, for all were filled with tears. Gimli wept openly. I have looked the last upon that which was fairest," he said to Legolas, his companion. "Henceforward I will call nothing fair unless it be her gift." He put his hand to his breast. "Tell me, Legolas, why did I come on this quest? Little did I know where the chief peril lay." He says, "Alas for Gimli, son of Gloin." "Nay," said Legolas, "alas for us all, and for all that walk the world in these after days. For such is the way of it, to find and lose, as it seems to those whose boat is on the running stream." They are now friends. So I would like you to, as you finish the as you begin the Two Towers, no, don't finish the Two Towers. Oh my gosh. As you start the Two Towers in the first 4 chapters, and as we work our way through it, I'd just like you to watch Gimli and Legolas's relationship and take note of things. Because this is a very strange thing in this world, that an elf and a dwarf should be friends and travel with hobbits and a man and a wizard, the wizard which they have lost. So who's in charge now? Gandalf was leading the way. Who's leading the way now? Who seems to be next in command, do you think? Aragorn. And does he sound like he feels confident about that? He doesn't. He says, you know what, when the great ones disappear, lesser people have to take their place. And you know what? This is exactly what Elrond said. Let me just leave you with something from the council. Just a second, I'm pretty sure it's underlined. This quest may be attempted by the weak with as much hope as the strong. Yet such is oft the course of deeds that move the wheels of the world. Small hands do them because they must, while the eyes of the great are elsewhere. And he also, Gandalf says later, only a small part is played in great deeds by any hero. So Gandalf gave his life to save them, but he got him as far as they got. And they've got to press on. All right, we left with Frodo running away from the rest of them. We ended the book. Why did he slip away from the rest of them? Why did he sneak off? Yeah, Gianna.
Well, he was already thinking about that because he didn't want to bring anyone into his, because he knew the quest needed to be done, but he didn't want to bring anyone. He just wanted to do it himself or try himself. But Boromir really pushed him off that,
What did Boromir want?
the ring.
Could Boromir help it? I mean, does that mean Boromir was evil? It doesn't. It just means he's not as strong as he thought. Not against the ring, and he kind of proves the point, that you guys wrote on. Should we take the ring to destroy it? All right. Okay, that is all I've got. Shut this off.